Admiral Hannah Park stood at the viewport of the Terran flagship Indomitable, staring at the holographic message that hovered before her. The Galactic Conclave's ultimatum was clear and non-negotiable. Earth must surrender its quantum displacement technology and cease all expansion beyond its 12 colony worlds or face immediate military action. "They're afraid of us," said Defense Minister Jin beside her, his weathered face tightening. "After centuries of treating humans as the galaxy's newcomers, they've discovered we're catching up too quickly." Hannah nodded grimly. "Humanity spent 200 years developing this technology. It's our key to the stars." The blue light of the hologram cast shadows across her face as she read the message again. The Conclave had given them 7 Earth days to comply, 7 days to decide the future of humanity. "Send it to the Council," she ordered her communications officer, "and prepare my shuttle. I need to be on Earth for this meeting." 6 hours later, Admiral Park's shuttle broke through Earth's atmosphere. The sprawling metropolis of New Sol spread beneath her, its towers gleaming in the morning sun. In the distance, the Grand Council building rose above all else, its crystalline dome designed to catch the light. Inside the council chambers, representatives from all 12 colony worlds had gathered. The air was tense with whispers and worried glances. Hannah strode down the center aisle, her uniform crisp and formal, her posture rigid with determination. President Ta greeted her with a firm handshake. At 73, he remained strong and sharp-minded, with only the silver of his hair betraying his age. "Admiral, we've all read the ultimatum. We need your assessment." Before she could answer, Representative Da from Mars Colony stood up. "This is madness. We cannot defy the Conclave. They have thousands of worlds, millions of ships. We have 12 colonies and a few hundred warships." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Hannah waited for them to quiet before speaking. "The Conclave has always limited us. First, they restricted us to our solar system for a century. Then they granted us permission to establish these 12 colonies, but no more. Now they demand we surrender the very technology that would finally free us from their control." She looked around the room. "This isn't about safety. It's about keeping humanity contained." Representative Da shook his head. "Even if that's true, defiance means war. A war we cannot win." "Perhaps," Hannah conceded, "but surrender means the end of human independence forever. We become a client species, bound by Conclave rules for all time." The debate raged for hours. Colony representatives argued about resources, military strength, and the mysterious Conclave technologies they had only glimpsed. Some colonies, like distant Artemis, had been relatively free from Conclave oversight. Others, like Venus and Europa, had Conclave observers permanently stationed there. President Ta listened to all sides, his face betraying nothing. When the arguments began to circle back on themselves, he raised his hand for silence. "Before we decide," he said, "there's a transmission you need to see. It arrived an hour ago from Artemis Colony." The large display screen at the front of the chamber flickered to life. The face of Dr. Mina Lee, lead archaeologist on Artemis, appeared. Her usual calm demeanor was replaced with barely contained excitement. "We'd found something in the ruins," she said breathlessly. "Something that changes everything we know about humanity's place in the galaxy." The image shifted to show a vast underground chamber. The walls were covered with intricate symbols and diagrams. "These ruins aren't alien construction, as we first thought," Dr. Lee explained. "The language encoded in these symbols is proto-human. These structures were built by our ancestors over 50,000 years ago." A shocked silence fell over the council chamber. "That's impossible," someone whispered. "Humans were primitive hunter-gatherers 50,000 years ago." Dr. Lee continued, "We found this chamber 3 days ago. It contains technology beyond anything we currently possess, including designs for quantum displacement systems far more advanced than what we've developed." The camera panned to show a central platform in the chamber, where a strange device sat. It was clearly ancient, yet looked more advanced than current Terran technology. Most importantly, Minna said, her voice dropping lower. We found historical records. Humanity wasn't always confined to Earth. We once had a vast interstellar civilization. And the Conclave. Her voice faltered. The Conclave wasn't our superior. They were our enemy. President Tai leaned forward. What are you saying, Doctor? I'm saying the Conclave didn't discover Earth. They conquered it. They used some kind of weapon or technology to wipe the memories of our entire species and reset our civilization. We weren't allowed to advance because we're newcomers. We were kept primitive because the Conclave fears what we might remember. The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted questions and exclamations of disbelief. President Tai had to call repeatedly for order. When the room finally quieted, Admiral Park spoke again. This changes everything. The quantum displacement technology they want us to surrender. It's not just our future. It's our past. It's the key to reclaiming what was taken from us. If what Dr. Lee says is true, Representative Dai said, his earlier certainty shaken. We need more information, President Ta decided. Admiral Park, I'm authorizing you to take your fastest ship to Artemis. See these ruins for yourself. Bring back irrefutable evidence. Hana nodded. And the Conclave Ultimatum. We have less than 6 days remaining. President Tai's face hardened. We'll delay. Tell them we're considering their demands and need time for all colonies to respond. But begin moving our fleets into defensive positions. Quietly. As the meeting adjourned, Admiral Park walked with President Tai to his private office. Do you think it's true? Ta asked when they were alone. Could we really have been reset by the Conclave? Hana looked out the window at the city below, at the people going about their lives, unaware that humanity's entire understanding of its place in the galaxy might be built on a lie. I don't know, she admitted, but I intend to find out. And if it is true, her hand rested on the hilt of her ceremonial sword. Then the Conclave has committed the greatest crime in history against our people, and they know we're close to discovering it. President Tai nodded slowly. Go to Artemis. Find the truth. And Admiral, be careful. If the Conclave realizes what we found, they'll strike before we're ready. Hana finished. I know. I'll be discreet. But as she left the council building, she couldn't help wondering if it was already too late for discretion. The quantum displacement technology had been humanity's greatest breakthrough in 2 centuries. Now it seemed it might have been humanity's legacy all along, a legacy someone had tried very hard to bury. And secrets buried that deep rarely stayed discovered for long. Commander Quan piloted the stealth vessel Phantom through the outer reaches of the Artemis system, evading the Conclave monitoring stations. Beside him, Special Operative Jun checked his weapons one last time. If the Conclave discovers we're ignoring their quarantine of Artemis, it could trigger an immediate attack, Jun said. Quan simply nodded. Their mission was too important for caution. The Phantom glided silently through space, its advanced cloaking systems masking it from detection. The ship was small but fast, designed for covert operations rather than combat. Its matte black hull absorbed light rather than reflecting it, making it nearly invisible against the darkness of space. 2 minutes to atmospheric entry, Quan announced, his fingers dancing across the controls. Admiral Park had personally selected him for this mission. His reputation as the best stealth pilot in the Terran fleet was well earned. 3 times he had slipped past Conclave blockades. Twice he had rescued stranded agents from hostile territory. But this mission felt different. The stakes were higher. Picking up increased Conclave communications, reported Jun, monitoring the sensor readouts. They've doubled their patrol ships since yesterday. They suspect something, Quan said grimly. We'll need to use the canyon approach. The canyon approach was dangerous. A steep descent through a narrow rocky gorge that would shield them from orbital scanners, but required perfect piloting. One wrong move would end with them smashed against the canyon walls. Quan took a deep breath and adjusted course. The Phantom shuddered as it hit Artemis's atmosphere. Outside, the air began to glow from friction, but Quan kept the ship's nose at precisely the right angle to minimize the heat signature. They dropped through cloud cover, and the massive canyon opened up before them, a jagged wound in the planet's surface. Quan's hands were steady as he guided the ship down, threading between towering rock formations at speeds that left no room for error. June gripped his seat but said nothing, trusting his pilot's skill. 5 minutes later, they touched down at the rendezvous coordinates, a flat area hidden beneath an overhanging cliff. Dr. Minna Lee was waiting for them, along with 2 of her research assistants. They wore the standard blue jumpsuits of the Artemis Scientific Corps, with added utility belts for their excavation tools. "You made it," she greeted them with obvious relief. "We need to move quickly. The site is 3 kilometers from here." They traveled in a ground vehicle with oversized wheels designed for the rough terrain. Mina pointed out landmarks as they drove. Unusual rock formations that her team had discovered were not natural, but the remains of ancient structures, worn down by thousands of years of wind and sand. "Most of the ruins are underground," she explained, "protected from the elements. That's why they've survived so long." 20 minutes later, they reached what looked like a simple cave entrance. Only when they got closer could they see the perfect geometric precision of the opening, too regular to be natural. Minna led them inside, activating light panels along the walls as they descended. The passage sloped downward, taking them deep beneath the surface. "Watch your step," she warned as they reached a section where the floor had partially collapsed. "This entire complex is over 50,000 years old." Finally, they emerged into a vast chamber that took their breath away. The ceiling soared 30 meters overhead, supported by columns carved with intricate symbols. The walls were covered with what looked like circuit patterns, though made of some unknown material. "These structures aren't alien," she explained, brushing dust from a wall covered in ancient symbols. "They're human, from at least 50,000 years ago." June looked skeptical. "How can you be sure they're human? They could be from any humanoid species." Mena smiled and led them to a section of wall where a large display panel still functioned, glowing with a soft blue light. She pressed her palm against it, and the screen came to life, showing a series of symbols that shifted and changed. "The system recognized my handprint as human," she explained, "and the language. We've been decoding it. It's proto-human, with root structures that evolved into multiple Earth languages. This isn't coincidence." She showed them chamber after chamber of evidence. Humanity had once been an advanced, spacefaring civilization. There were star maps showing human outposts across hundreds of systems, technical diagrams for ships capable of faster-than-light travel, and most disturbing of all, records of a conflict with a coalition of alien species that called themselves the Conclave. In a central chamber, they found what appeared to be a historical archive. Minna activated the system, and holographic images appeared, recording the fall of human civilization. "The war lasted decades," Minna narrated as the images played out. "Humans were outnumbered but technologically superior. Eventually, the Conclave developed a weapon they called the Great Forgetting. It didn't just defeat humans, it reset them." The images showed massive ships surrounding Earth, deploying devices that emitted waves of energy that washed over the planet. "They wiped our collective memory," Minna said softly. "Not just of the war, but of everything. Our technology, our history, our identity as a spacefaring species. They reduced us to primitive hunter-gatherers, then quarantined our world to ensure we would develop along paths they controlled." Quan stared at the records, his mind struggling to accept the implications. "So when they discovered we were developing quantum displacement technology, they panicked," Minna finished. "The quantum displacement technology they're demanding we surrender. It was originally ours. They fear we'll remember who we were." June examined a device in the center of the room, clearly the prototype for modern human quantum displacement technology, but far more advanced. "Can we get this working again?" he asked. Minna nodded. "My team has been studying it for weeks. We believe. She was interrupted by a sharp beeping from Quan's wrist device. He checked it, his expression instantly alert. My ship's proximity sensors just triggered. Something entered orbit. He activated his portable scanner, and his face went pale. Conclave scouts, he warned. Someone told them we're here. Minna looked stricken. Impossible. Only my team knew about your arrival. Then someone on your team talked, Jun said grimly, drawing his weapon. We need to get this evidence and go. Now. They worked frantically, downloading data cores and gathering physical samples. Mina collected key artifacts, carefully wrapping them in protective coverings. What about the displacement device? Jun asked, pointing to the central machine. Too big to move, Mina said regretfully. But I have the schematics. If we can get those back to Earth. A distant rumble shook the chamber, sending dust raining from the ceiling. Orbital bombardment, Quan said tersely. They're targeting the surface near our location. We have minutes at most. They ran back through the tunnels, carrying as much evidence as they could manage. The ground continued to shake around them, and several times they had to detour around collapsed sections of tunnel. When they finally reached the surface, they could see energy blasts striking the ground several kilometers away, creating massive explosions. They don't know exactly where we are, Quan said as they piled into the ground vehicle, but they're getting closer. They raced toward the Phantom, the ground vehicle bouncing violently over the rough terrain. Behind them, the bombardment was intensifying, the impacts coming closer. Reaching the ship, they hurriedly loaded the evidence. Quan immediately began the startup sequence while Jun secured their cargo. Hang on, Quan warned as he initiated an emergency liftoff. The Phantom rose vertically, its engines straining under the rapid acceleration. They barely cleared the cliff when Quan's sensors lit up with warnings. Multiple Conclave warships just emerged from hyperspace, he announced, his voice tight. Heavy cruisers, not just scouts. Can we outrun them? Minna asked, strapping herself into a seat. Not in a fair fight, Quan said, a grim smile appearing on his face. Good thing I don't fight fair. He pushed the Phantom into a steep climb, then suddenly cut the main engines and activated the emergency thrusters in a pattern that sent them tumbling in an unpredictable trajectory. To pursuers, it would look like they'd lost control. As the ship spun, Quan precisely timed the activation of their experimental quantum displacement drive. In a flash of blue-white energy, the Phantom disappeared, only to reappear 2 light minutes away, behind one of Artemis's moons. That bought us some time, Quan said, quickly plotting a course for Earth. But they'll figure out what happened and follow our displacement signature. Will we make it home? Minna asked quietly. Quan met her eyes in the reflection of the view screen. With what you've discovered, we have to. The Phantom accelerated to maximum speed, racing away from Artemis with its precious cargo, evidence that would forever change humanity's understanding of its place in the galaxy, and perhaps its future. The Terran Council chamber erupted into chaos as Quan and Minna presented their findings. Evidence that humans had been systematically suppressed by the Conclave for millennia changed everything. Silence. President Tay's voice cut through the uproar. The chamber gradually quieted, though the tension remained thick enough to touch. Commander Quan stood rigidly beside Dr. Minna Lee at the central podium. Behind them, a large screen displayed images from the Artemis ruins, ancient star maps showing human colonies, technical diagrams of advanced ships, and most damning of all, Conclave records of the Great Forgetting. I understand your shock, Quan said. We felt the same when we first saw these ruins, but the evidence is clear. These artifacts aren't compatible with any known alien technology. They were designed for human use. Minna stepped forward, her voice steadied despite her exhaustion. The language encoded in these ruins shares root structures with Earth languages. The biometric systems respond only to human DNA, and the historical records explicitly document the war between ancient humans and the early Conclave. Representative Da from Mars Colony, who had previously advocated for compliance with the Conclave Ultimatum, now looked pale. If this is true, then everything we know about our history is a lie. Not everything, Minna corrected. Just our place in the galaxy. We weren't uplifted by the Conclave's generosity. We were defeated and deliberately regressed. Admiral Park, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. The quantum displacement technology they're demanding we surrender, it was originally human technology. That's why they want it so badly. They fear what else we might recover from our past. The implications slowly sank in across the council chamber. The representatives from the 12 colonies looked at each other with new understanding. Humanity's rapid technological advancement over the past 2 centuries wasn't just good fortune. It was reclaiming what had once been theirs. We were never newcomers to the galaxy, President Ta said quietly. We were prisoners. His words seemed to hang in the air. For several moments, no one spoke. Then Representative Han from Europa Colony stood. I motion that we reject the Conclave Ultimatum immediately and declare our independence from their authority. Second, called Representative Kim from Proxima Centauri. President Tai nodded gravely. Then let us vote. The fate of humanity rests on our decision today. The vote was displayed on the large screen, colony by colony. Earth, Mars, Europa, Proxima Centauri, Artemis, New Terra, Helios, Demeter, Atlas, Hyperion, Titan. One by one, they voted to defy the conclave. Only AO Colony hesitated, its representatives citing concerns about their vulnerable position. But in the end, they too joined the consensus. The vote was nearly unanimous. Earth would reject the ultimatum. It is decided, President Tai announced. We will inform the conclave of our decision immediately. Admiral Park, begin defensive preparations. The conclave will not take this lightly. The meeting adjourned, and the council members dispersed to prepare their colonies for what would surely come next. Admiral Park remained behind with President Tai, Commander Kwan, and Dr. Minna. How much time do we have? President Tai asked. Admiral Park's expression was grim. The ultimatum gave us 7 days. We've used 3. Once we reject their demands, I expect they'll move immediately. Then we must be ready. President Tai turned to Minna. Doctor, how quickly can you implement what you've learned from the Artemis ruins? Minna exchanged a look with Kwan before answering. Some technologies will take years to fully understand, but the quantum displacement network, we've already adapted several key improvements from the ancient designs. With your authorization, we can implement them immediately. Do it, President Tai ordered. And Admiral, is Operation Phoenix ready? A thin smile appeared on Admiral Park's face. It has been ready for years, Mr. President. We were just waiting for the right moment. 4 hours later, President Tai addressed the entire Terran Empire from the Grand Hall in New Seoul. The broadcast reached all 12 colonies simultaneously. Billions of humans watched as their leader revealed the truth about humanity's past and the conclave's deception. Citizens of Earth and her colonies, he began. Today we stand at a crossroads in human history. For centuries, we believed we were newcomers to galactic society, grateful recipients of the conclave's guidance. We now know this was a lie. He explained the discoveries on Artemis in simple terms, showing selected images from the ruins as evidence. He described how the conclave had used the Great Forgetting to reset human civilization and keep humanity contained. The ultimatum we received demanding we surrender our quantum displacement technology was not about safety or galactic stability, President Ta continued. It was about control, about ensuring humans remained subordinate. His voice grew stronger, more resolute. Today, we reclaim our rightful place among the stars. We will no longer accept the conclave's authority over human destiny. Throughout the colonies, people watched in stunned silence. Some wept. Others cheered. Most simply tried to process this fundamental shift in their understanding of humanity's place in the universe. We do not seek war, President Tai emphasized. but neither will we surrender our independence again. The Conclave has given us no choice but to defend ourselves." He ended with a call for unity and courage in the face of what was to come. As the broadcast concluded, emergency response systems across all colonies activated, instructing citizens on evacuation procedures and safety protocols. At Conclave headquarters in the Rigel system, Ambassador Sung watched the broadcast with a carefully neutral expression. Around her, alien representatives from the 37 species of the Conclave reacted with everything from outrage to concern to calculating interest. The Conclave High Minister, a tall, spindly being from one of the elder races, turned to her. "Is this your government's official response to our ultimatum?" Ambassador Sung straightened her back. "It is. Earth rejects your demands and withdraws from all treaties with the Conclave, effective immediately." "This is most unfortunate," the High Minister said coldly. "You will remain here while the Conclave determines its response." As the alien representatives filed out of the chamber, Sung realized the communications panel at her station had been deactivated. She was now effectively a hostage. Back on Earth, in the heavily fortified command center beneath New Seoul, Admiral Park received confirmation that the Conclave had cut all diplomatic channels. "They've detained Ambassador Sung," reported her communications officer, "and we're detecting multiple Conclave warships changing course toward our colonies." Admiral Park's face showed no surprise. This was exactly what they had expected. She turned to her command staff, each officer waiting for her orders. "Initiate Operation Phoenix," she ordered. The command echoed through secure channels to all 12 colonies. Within minutes, hidden installations across human space hummed to life. Deep underground, in mountain bunkers, beneath oceans, and inside hollowed-out asteroids, systems that had been prepared in secret for decades activated. The quantum displacement network was more advanced than the Conclave suspected. Much more advanced. Beneath the surface of Mars, massive energy reactors powered up, creating the first node in an interlinked defense grid. On Europa, arrays hidden under the ice unfurled, ready to generate displacement shields. In orbit around Proxima Centauri, stealth platforms decloaked, revealing weapons systems based on the ancient human designs found on Artemis. Admiral Park watched as status reports flooded in from across human space. Everything was proceeding as planned. Operation Phoenix, named for the mythical bird that rose from its own ashes, was transforming the Terran Empire from an apparent collection of vulnerable colonies into a formidable defensive network. First wave of Conclave ships will reach Helios colony in approximately 9 hours, her tactical officer reported. Admiral Park nodded calmly. "Right on schedule. Signal all fleet commanders. Deploy to predetermined positions. Phase 1 begins now." The die was cast. After 50,000 years, humanity was finally ready to reclaim its freedom. Whether that freedom would last beyond the coming days remained to be seen. The Conclave attacked at dawn, their warships emerging above the farming colony of Helios with weapons blazing. They expected minimal resistance from what they considered a minor species. They were wrong. The first volley from the Conclave flagship obliterated Helios' orbital weather control station. Debris rained down, creating streaks of fire across the morning sky. On the surface, emergency alarms wailed as colonists ran for the shelters. Governor Seo watched from the colony's command center, her face illuminated by the tactical displays. Status of defensive systems. Online and ready, her security chief confirmed. Displacement field generators at full power. Seo nodded grimly. "Activate on my mark." Above them, the Conclave attack force moved into standard invasion formation. 27 warships, arranged in 3 attack wings, approached the planet with methodical precision. Their sensors showed only minimal defensive installations, exactly what they expected from a farming colony. The Conclave commander, a reptilian being named Vexlar, gazed at the blue-green world below with contempt. "Begin landing sequence for ground forces," he ordered. "Target all military installations first, then government buildings." His subordinate hesitated. "Commander, We're detecting unusual energy readings from the surface. Irrelevant. Vexlar dismissed. Their technology is primitive. Proceed as planned. On the planet's surface, Governor CO gave the order. Mark. Quantum displacement portals flared across the system. Massive rings of blue-white energy opened in space, their centers swirling with impossible geometries. Through these portals, Terran battleships appeared instantly where none had been before, their advanced weapons systems, reverse-engineered from ancient human technology, catching the Conclave forces completely by surprise. The Terran flagship Indomitable emerged directly above the Conclave formation. Admiral Park stood on its bridge, watching as her carefully planned trap unfolded. "Target their command vessels," she ordered calmly. "Disable their engines first." Beams of concentrated energy lanced out from the human ships, striking with pinpoint accuracy. 3 Conclave cruisers lost engine power immediately, beginning to drift. The others scattered, trying to form a defensive position. "Impossible," Vexlar shouted as warnings blared across his bridge. "How did they?" His tactical officer's voice was tight with fear. "Commander, these are not colony defense forces. This is the main Terran fleet. And their weapons." He swallowed hard. "They're using displacement technology as weapons." Vexlar's scales paled. The Conclave had feared exactly this, humans weaponizing the quantum displacement technology. That was why the ultimatum had been issued in the first place. "All ships, concentrate fire on their flagship," he ordered. The remaining Conclave vessels regrouped, focusing their considerable firepower on the Indomitable. Energy blasts and projectile weapons converged on the human ship. Admiral Park remained standing as her vessel shuddered under the assault. "Displacement shields holding at 82%, reported her defensive systems officer. "Return fire," Park ordered. Pattern Omega. The Indomitable's main batteries discharged in a precisely coordinated sequence. Rather than firing directly at the Conclave ships, the energy beams entered small displacement portals generated just outside the ship's hull. They emerged from similar portals directly inside the shields of 3 Conclave vessels, bypassing their defensive systems completely. All 3 ships went dark, their power cores shut down by the precision strikes. Across the system, similar battles unfolded as human vessels engaged the surprised Conclave forces. The quantum displacement technology allowed the Terran ships to appear and disappear at will, making them nearly impossible to target effectively. Meanwhile, far from the battle at Helios, Commander Quan approached the Conclave headquarters in the Rigel system. His stealth vessel, the Phantom, carried a small but elite team, 6 Special Forces operatives, and Dr. Minali, whose knowledge of ancient human technology had proven invaluable. "We'll have approximately 20 minutes once we breach their security systems," Quan told his team as they prepared their gear. "After that, they'll adapt to our intrusion methods." The Conclave headquarters was a massive orbital station, home to representatives from all 37 member species. Its security was considered impenetrable. Multiple shield layers, constant sensor sweeps, and guards from the most militaristic Conclave species. But the Conclave had designed their security to keep out conventional threats. They hadn't prepared for the ancient human technologies that Minna had helped resurrect. "Ready with the displacement device," Minna said, making final adjustments to a small device that looked like a metallic sphere with intricate patterns etched into its surface. Quan nodded. "Activate on my mark." 3, 2, 1. Mark. Minna activated the device. Instead of creating a visible portal, this specialized displacement generator created a tiny bubble of altered spacetime that enveloped the Phantom completely. To outside observers and sensors, they simply ceased to exist. In reality, they had partially shifted into a different phase of spacetime, present but undetectable. The effect would only last for minutes before requiring a recharge, but it was enough to get them past the outer security perimeter. They docked at an unused maintenance port, bypassing the main arrival areas entirely. Once inside, they moved quickly through service corridors, using the station schematics obtained from Terran intelligence. Ambassador Sung is being held in the diplomatic wing, Quan said, checking his tactical display. Level 47, Section C. They encountered their first resistance at a security checkpoint. 2 guards from a species known for their enhanced senses. Before the aliens could sound an alarm, Quan's team neutralized them with stun weapons specifically calibrated for conclave physiology. Fighting through 2 more security teams, they finally reached the diplomatic wing. Ambassador Sung's quarters were sealed and guarded by elite conclave security forces. Frontal assault is suicide, observed one of Quan's team. Mina stepped forward. We don't need to go through the door. She placed another device against the wall adjacent to the ambassador's quarters. Stand back. The device hummed softly, creating a small displacement portal directly through the wall. Quan was the first through, weapon ready. Inside, they found Ambassador Sung already gathering essential items into a small bag. She showed no surprise at their arrival. I was wondering when you'd get here, she said calmly. We need to move quickly. The elder races have just ordered my execution. How did you know we were coming? Quan asked as they moved toward the portal. I didn't, but I prepared anyway. Sung smiled thinly. Never underestimate a diplomat's contingency planning. As they made their way back toward the Phantom, alarms began blaring throughout the station. They've discovered the breach, Quan said. Double time. They encountered heavy resistance on the return journey. Conclave security forces armed with powerful weapons designed to stop escapees. Twice they were nearly cornered, saved only by Mina's displacement devices, creating unexpected escape routes. In a maintenance corridor, just 2 levels from their ship, Ambassador Sung pulled Quan aside while the others engaged Conclave forces. The Conclave is fracturing, she told him as they fled toward the extraction point. The Nabi, the Dakavi, and the Samjogo delegations all expressed sympathy for Earth. They've been manipulated by the elder races for centuries too. Quan looked surprised. Potential allies. More than potential, Sung confirmed. They've been secretly communicating with me. The evidence you found on Artemis, it confirmed what they've long suspected about the elder races and their methods. They reached the Phantom just as station security began to close in from multiple directions. As the ship detached from the station, Conclave weapons fire raked its hull. Displacement drive online, Mina announced. Ready to jump. Wait, Ambassador Sung said. Set course for the Nabi home system first. We need to secure their alliance before returning to Earth. Quan hesitated, then nodded. Coordinates locked in. Activating displacement drive. The Phantom disappeared in a flash of blue-white energy, leaving frustrated Conclave security forces staring at empty space. Back at Helios colony, Admiral Park's strategy worked perfectly. While the Conclave focused on the colonies, a second fleet jumped directly to the heart of Conclave space, demonstrating that nowhere was beyond humanity's reach. This second fleet, led by Vice Admiral Yu aboard the dreadnought Defiance, appeared in orbit around the Conclave capital world. They made no aggressive moves. Their presence alone was the message. On Helios, the battle was reaching its conclusion. Vexillar's flagship was drifting, its engines destroyed and weapons disabled. Nearly half the Conclave attack force had been neutralized, the remainder attempting a disorganized retreat. They're running, Admiral Park's tactical officer reported with satisfaction. Park nodded. Let them go. They'll carry the message better than any transmission we could send. She opened a channel to the crippled Conclave flagship. Conclave Commander, this is Admiral Park of the Terran fleet. Your attack on a peaceful colony has failed. We could destroy your remaining vessels, but we will allow you to retreat and tend to your wounded. Consider this mercy a human trait you may have forgotten. There was a long pause before Vexillar responded, his voice tight with rage and humiliation. This isn't over, human. The full might of the Conclave will answer this defiance. Perhaps, Park replied evenly. But now you know we are ready. The battle for Helios ended with the first major human victory, though at heavy cost. 2 Terran cruisers had been destroyed, and the colony's orbital infrastructure lay in ruins. Emergency teams worked frantically to repair critical systems and treat the injured. In her command center, Governor Seo surveyed the damage reports with a grim expression. Was it worth it? She asked when Admiral Park contacted her. It was necessary, Park answered simply. And yes, worth it. The Conclave had underestimated humanity for the last time. As the remaining Conclave ships limped away from Helios, a new chapter in galactic history had begun, one where humans would no longer be the subjugated species they had been engineered to be. This summit was unthinkable 2 weeks ago, President Ta said, as he surveyed the gathered representatives. The station Harmony floated in neutral space between Terran and former Conclave territories. Its grand chamber, hastily converted from a trading post, now contained delegations from 30 different species. Human representatives sat alongside aliens of all descriptions, some with scales, others with feathers, some with multiple limbs or eyes, but all united by a shared purpose. The Terran delegation sat at the center table. President Tai was flanked by Admiral Park, Commander Kwan, Ambassador Sung, and Dr. Min Ali. Their faces showed the strain of the past 2 weeks, sleepless nights, constant crisis management, and the weight of decisions affecting billions of lives. Across from them sat representatives of the elder races of the Conclave, their postures rigid with tension. Once the undisputed rulers of galactic civilization, they now faced a fundamentally altered reality. We agreed to this meeting under protest, said the Conclave High Minister, his translucent skin flushing with barely controlled anger. The attack on our headquarters was an act of war, as was your unprovoked assault on Helios colony, President Tay replied calmly. But we are not here to exchange accusations. We are here to build a new future. He gestured to the 3 species who had broken away from the Conclave first, the crystalline Nabi, the 4-armed Dakibi, and the avian Samjogo. Their representatives now sat with the human delegation. The truth can no longer be hidden, President Ta continued. For too long, the elder races have maintained their dominance through deception and oppression. At his signal, Admiral Park activated the central display system. Images from the Artemis ruins appeared, alongside data recovered from raids on Conclave archives. The evidence was presented methodically, clearly translated for all species present. Admiral Park's voice was steadied as she explained what they had found. The Conclave was not founded as a peaceful federation, as most of you have been taught. It began as an alliance of the elder races to suppress any species that might challenge their power. Images showed the deliberate containment of dozens of developing civilizations, technologies confiscated, promising species quarantined or subjected to memory-wiping technologies similar to what had been used on humans. Earth was not your only victim, she concluded, looking directly at the elder races, just the most recent. The chamber erupted in multilingual chaos. Species that had been loyal Conclave members for centuries demanded explanations from the elder races. The High Minister attempted to dismiss the evidence as human fabrications, but his protests sounded hollow even to his allies. A representative of the insectoid Xylix species, longtime Conclave members, rose from their seat. Their translator device conveyed their clicking speech. The displacement technology that humans rediscovered. Our historical records show we once possessed similar capabilities. The Conclave claimed it was too dangerous and took it from us. Was this also a lie? The elder races had no satisfactory answer. As more revelations came to light, additional delegations abandoned the ancient Conclave structure. The elder races found themselves increasingly isolated. By the 3rd day of the summit, the balance of power had shifted dramatically. 2/3 of the former Conclave members now sat with the human-led coalition. The remaining species were mostly those too dependent on elder race technologies to break away immediately. On the 4th day, President Tai rose to speak to the reconfigured assembly. The chamber quieted as he approached the central podium. For thousands of years, the elder races maintained their power by keeping other species divided and technologically limited, he began. They feared what we might become if allowed to develop freely. But their greatest mistake was believing that suppression could work forever. He gestured to the diverse gathering before him. Look around you. In 2 weeks, their careful system of control has collapsed, not primarily because of military defeat, but because the truth is a more powerful weapon than any warship. His voice strengthened as he continued. We propose a new galactic covenant with all species as equals, technology sharing rather than suppression, cooperation rather than domination. The proposal was detailed and practical. A rotating council where no species could hold permanent authority. Technological review boards composed of diverse members. Open archaeological access to all species' origin worlds. And most importantly, a truth commission to fully document the conclave's past actions. The elder races objected strenuously, warning of chaos and technological disasters if lesser species gained access to advanced technologies too quickly. Ambassador Sung addressed these concerns directly. We understand your fear of change. But consider this, on Earth, we have a saying, the truth will set you free. Even for the elder races, there can be freedom in relinquishing control. You no longer need to maintain this enormous system of deception. You can simply be one group of species among many. After 7 days of intense negotiations, 26 species signed the preliminary agreement creating the Galactic Covenant. The elder races, reduced to observer status, had little choice but to accept the new reality. 2 months later, Dr. Minna Lee stood in her new office on Artemis. Through her window, she could see construction vehicles preparing the foundation for what would become the Reclamation Institute, a multi-species research center dedicated to recovering lost technologies and histories. The first archaeological teams from the Nabi and Dakibi arrive tomorrow. She told her assistant, "We'll begin with a complete survey of the main chamber." The discovery on Artemis had been just the beginning. Similar sites had been found on 6 other worlds, each containing pieces of humanity's forgotten past. The work of recovery would take decades, perhaps centuries. Meanwhile, the political landscape of the galaxy continued to transform. The former conclave fractured completely as more species declared their independence. Some joined the Covenant, others formed regional alliances, and a few chose isolation to determine their own paths forward. The Terran Empire expanded cautiously, establishing new colonies but also focusing on strengthening existing worlds. The quantum displacement network connected human settlements more efficiently than ever before, creating an integrated civilization that grew stronger each day. 6 months after the summit, Commander Quan and Ambassador Sung stood on an observation deck overlooking the nearly completed headquarters of the new Galactic Covenant. The massive complex spread across what had once been neutral territory, but was now the symbolic center of a new galactic order. Ships from dozens of species arrived daily, bringing representatives, researchers, and ordinary citizens curious to witness the changes reshaping the galaxy. The architectural styles of many civilizations had been incorporated into the headquarters design, creating a structure unlike anything that had existed before. It's not perfect, Sung admitted, watching a minor diplomatic dispute unfold between 2 newly independent species on the plaza below. Freedom brings complications. Quan nodded. But it's real, not a controlled simulation like the Conclave created. They watched as ships from Earth arrived, bringing more human representatives to join the Covenant's growing administration. Earth was taking a leading role in the new order, but carefully avoiding the domination that had characterized the elder races. The Conclave spent thousands of years trying to suppress humanity's defining trait, Sung observed. Which is? Asked Quan. She smiled. Defiance. When faced with impossible odds, humans don't surrender. They find another way. Quan considered this. Not just defiance. Adaptability, too. And curiosity. All traits the elder races feared, Sung agreed. They wanted predictability and control. Instead, they got us. Beyond them, ships from 24 species arrived, bringing representatives to help forge a new future among the stars, one where humanity had reclaimed its rightful place, not as rulers, but as equals, not as newcomers, but as returned travelers with a complex past and an uncertain but promising future. The galaxy had entered a new age. What it would become remained to be written by all species together, a story no longer controlled by a select few, but shared by many. The end.